Kristin Palmer, thank you so much. This is the second time you've been on Coffee with Kevin. You're obviously running for District C. So if you want to go back, this is episode 2. This is part 2. So if you want to see part 1, so just to recap part 1 real quick, you talk about all of District C and what District C is. Right. The French Quarter, the West Bank, Bywater, Treme, and you really give a and some of the comments on that has been, wow, that's so interesting about the different neighborhoods and how those different neighborhoods come into District C and how that matters. So if you want to see that, definitely go back and check that episode out. This episode, though, I have more of a vested interest in like St. Claude.
Okay.
Obviously.
That's where we are.
We live right off of, my wife and I were raised in a 2-year-old right off of St. Claude. So, Bywater, the St. Claude neighborhood is definitely something that's like, and I mean like, I'm worried about like raising a family here. You know what I mean? So definitely that's my more interest. So I want to focus in on that on this episode.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So, number 1, I'm a huge Streetcar fan. Huge Streetcar. I love that new Streetcar. I am about that new Streetcar.
And I got that Streetcar here.
Thank you so much.
Well, a lot of us worked very hard on it, but when I came into office, the first time I was in office from 2010 to 2014, that Streetcar was supposed to be on Convention Center Boulevard.
But you already have the Riverfront Streetcar.
And not just that, nobody lives on Convention Center Boulevard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, to me, it was really important to have that kind of investment below Canal Street, where we haven't seen that kind of transportation investment in many, 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 many years. So I just felt, to me, the streetcar's transportation is connecting people to jobs and to places and to work and where they live. So I lobbied for it and we got it and I'm excited.
It's absolutely wonderful. I use it a lot. I use it. People, I know you don't use the streetcar. No, I really do. You don't have to park downtown. I can hop on it. I can walk down there.
We just need to expand it. And I do think that there's some...
I was hoping you would say that. I want more streetcars.
I wanted to. I don't know if your watchers really know that even the bridge that goes into the Lower 9 originally has streetcar tracks.
Yes, it does.
So it's supposed to go in the Lower 9. I was a big advocate for bringing it all the way down to Poland, and I would love to see it go to the Lower 9, but we need to really, obviously, get funding. It's a funding issue. So, I'm a huge proponent. A lot of people don't understand. Now, there are some issues. There are people that are concerned with buses and accessibility, and if the streetcar takes away and the amount of investment that the streetcar takes.
Well, I've read an article from RTA that says that's bonk. So, because I'm a big, so when I'm reading this stuff.
This is the interesting thing about streetcars in New Orleans that we all need to realize is that the streetcars are made in New Orleans.
Yes.
So that's a whole other level of economic development and good jobs for people that make the streetcars.
We build them. We manufacture them here. Out of metal and wood.
Correct.
Because we've actually, and I do know that, I'm a huge streetcar fan. So I do know that, since the old green ones we've had to refurbish so many times that we learned how to build light rail, mass transit, build it here.
Right. And so those are good jobs. It's great for expansion. And also because the way they're built, they last much longer than buses. People don't realize that. So when we talk about environmental issues and sustainability, a streetcar is going to last longer than a bus. It's not relying on fossil fuels. And so there are all these multiplier benefits that I don't really think were taken into account. In addition to that, because the rail system is set in place, it allows for development because people know it's going to happen. They know it's not going to be picked up like a bus route and moved somewhere else. And people like transportation routes that are there, and people can understand that they're there, and it brings more people to the corridor.
Yeah, because people that were fighting against it were like, there's no historical precedent for that. And I'm like, no, of course not. Like it's because my grandfather took the St. Claude streetcar back.
I was in the Lower Garden District somewhere in a cafe, and there were still streetcars, tracks down there.
They were everywhere.
They're everywhere. And it's something that we should really, I would like to see an expansion. I think it's good that right now there's a lot of the mobility studies happening and all over the city, and so it's going to be really interesting to see what people think. So,
when you talk about Rampart and you talk about transportation, it's not just, you've got 2 lanes of traffic, a bike lane, and the streetcar. You've got parking. It's beautiful. like Rampart is gorgeous today.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
and I think, and it's a whole,
Right.
and so that much transportation and that much people create business.
It does. It absolutely does. And if you look at, and that's the reason why our city is so walkable and livable, is because we still have the same, historic core, and so we need to really just build upon the things that we have.
Yeah.
And so that's what good, thoughtful transportation policy can do that. When I was in office as well, I created the Sustainable Transit Advisory Committee called STAC, and we were able to write legislation called Complete Streets, which basically means every time you redo a street, you have to redo it for all users.
Okay.
For bus, for public transit, for pedestrians and bicycles.
Okay.
We made it a law. It's the only law in the state. It's the only one of a handful in the entire country. And that's why our streets have changed overnight to all these bike paths.
Yeah.
Because the administration doesn't have a choice. If they're going to redo a street,
They've
they
gotta
have
put
to
it in.
put in a bike path.
Right. And then the bike path,
If it's feasible.
if it's feasible, right. So the bike paths have not, except for Verone, they put that like, I don't know what
Yeah,
to
I
do
don't
with
understand that.
That one's, yeah,
Yeah,
that's weird.
that's
That
weird.
one's, yeah.
That's not my district, so we won't talk about it.
Okay, we'll pay. So you talk about Rampart, we're talking
Right.
about that. One of the biggest, like, I guess, questions when I'm looking at Rampart, or like, why isn't the municipal auditorium back in function? So what's your plan? Do you have a plan for
Yes,
that?
I do. That is going to be my big focus. I think, because right now we're just talking about the East Bank, not the West Bank, so I just want
Yes.
viewers to know that.
Yeah, yes, go see the episode
Right,
1 talks
right,
about that.
Right. Because we have got a lot of plans for the West Bank as well. But
Yeah.
on the East Bank, I really think we had a lot of money. A lot of disaster recovery projects were done when I was in office throughout the East Bank. That one we really need to focus on. And I think we also have to focus on it with a total redesign of Armstrong Park and that fence, which is a barrier, and it's a barrier to Treme as
Okay.
well. And so we need to make sure that the communities of Treme are involved in this discussion. But first and foremost, while we're starting the community engagement piece on what's the smart thing to do with the municipal auditorium and the surrounding park, we have to do a forensic audit on where that money went, that FEMA money went for the municipal auditorium. We got to see exactly how much money we have left and how we can leverage those funds.
Yeah, because that's such a cool building.
It is, and it may have to be a public-private partnership, only because I can't, the amount of funding it's going to take to do.
It's going to be a lot.
Right.
Yeah, it ain't free.
No, it's not going to be true.
All right, so the next thing, you talk about development, you talk about the streetcar coming down St. Claude, it starts to get like, and Bywater is so, now that we're living there, it's like, I don't want to say schizophrenic's not the right word, but like, there's two warring like neighborhood groups, like one that feels one way, one that feels the other way. I don't even know which one I'm supposed to belong to, or which one I feel like.
I belong to both.
Belong to both. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I'm new to that fashions of stuff.
Right.
But one of the biggest things, like, so Crescent Park, okay, clearly the city has a manifest destiny to create Crescent Park as a completely together park with the
Right.
bonnet. They're gonna build high rises on the river. Like, what? I'm confused. What's gonna happen there?
Well, you see, that's a problem when people are confused.
I'm very confused.
Right,
I have no idea what's going on.
you're well, you're well read.
Yeah, I'm trying to read stuff, and I see like these heights or this height or what do these heights mean? I don't know what all that means.
Well, what we have to remember is that all the communities worked very, very hard on planning their communities, especially after the storm. And we had a master planning process and we passed it, the council, which means there's a master plan. It has the force of law. It can be amended once a year, which is what I supported because obviously we're not infallible. And then our comprehensive zoning ordinance was supposed to be redone to reflect the master plan. And the master plan had input from all the communities. So it's that comprehensive zoning ordinance that we're supposed to follow. And so there were certain rules within the comprehensive zoning ordinance,
Height restrictions
and
like
all that need to be followed. And the premise and the reason why we did this as a city is because before Katrina, we had this ad hoc way of zoning, and we're allowing council members at a whim to say, well, yeah, if a developer comes and they want this, they can do whatever they want, you know? And there's maybe different types of access, and maybe things weren't done right, undue influence. And I think all in the city.
In other words, if you pay the right councilman off, you can tear down a Pontebello building.
Right, and also, and it's also not fair to all the developers and all the business owners that want to do things the right way, right? You should be able to go into look online, see what your property is zoned as, or wherever it is, and see exactly what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Yeah, and that's the end of the story.
And that's what, and studies have shown, cities that have that, those are like the Seattles, the Portlands, because then everybody knows it's an equal playing field.
And this is what it is.
And that's what we were striving to do. The current council person has consistently backtracked on that and has consistently allowed access to certain developers and allows her opinion to supersede that of the community. And worse than that, she's not allowing the community at the table when she makes these types of decisions. And case in point, if you look at the amendments she dropped when the CZO is going to be passed, which happened in her term, she dropped 4 or 5 amendments that nobody had seen. Nobody had the ability to look at these amendments. They were focusing on ABOs. They were focusing on that could totally impinge the quality of life of our communities.
Okay.
And that is something that should not have happened. Luckily,
and are you speaking on the riverfront, or we've gone to different places?
They're all different issues,
okay.
But I think it's reflective of what we have to look for when we're engaged within the political process. And to do that without any kind of public thought or input is wrong, and that's what we're trying to move away from.
Because I see the park, and I'm hearing that people want to put these high-rise condos on the river, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or whatever. And then like the cruise ship terminal, which is something that is floating around. I've been told from the Army Corps of Engineers that that's probably not a possibility to even put a cruise ship terminal there. So I don't know whether is that something like the cruise ship terminal in Poland? Is that something? How do you feel of that? Is that something? Is that just talk, or is that something that can happen?
I think my understanding is that the port has pulled that back, and that's not on the table right now. And that's what I'm hearing from the port.
Okay.
And then they made a presentation at an FQBA luncheon.
See, so they're working on that. From what I heard from the Army Corps of Engineers, they're working on it because it needs to be stabilized, but it's not conducive to a
and
cruise
right
ship
now
thing.
My understanding is the port's doing a master plan, which I hope all the communities along the river are engaged in and involved in, especially because even in Algiers, we also, the port owns property there. I am not going to be supportive of a cruise ship terminal in that location if there has not been, if the communities do not want it, if it's not going to be done with the communities and thoughtfully planned. And I think we also, more than that, we have to pay attention not just to that planning process of it, but also there has to be a study on the transportation issues and whether or not Bywater can even handle that kind of infrastructure right now, because there's so many pressures happening within this corridor, and we need to be very careful for that.
Because we want things to get back into commerce, because I have my business here.
Right.
And I want it to continue to thrive, and I want my son to have a nice life here, and it comes from us having a good business here, and all of that comes together. But when does too much, and how do we balance
which is why we have to have a planning process on this thing, which is why we have to watch it very closely. But and I want your listeners to also be very clear. I'm not anti-development. I'm very much. I've worked very hard with a lot of businesses to get them open along this corridor, from Faubourg Wines to Second Vine. I worked very closely with them to make sure that they could open. We have new businesses, and St. Roch Market, to make sure we had good businesses. Not all development is good development, and so that's why you have to really
balance that
right.
out. And so of course, and I think we talked about it. We did touch on it last episode, but I want to go a little bit more in depth into it right now. The Airbnbs, because that's such a major issue with this area, St. Roch. The St. Roch neighborhood, Treme, your district here. This is
it's a huge issue.
It's a huge issue. How do we regulate it? How are we going to do about it, very specifically? Help me out here.
Okay, so I think the legislation was not thoughtful and was not well done when it was passed. I also don't think that the communities had the input that they needed on this. I am very much in favor of the moratorium in the French Quarter.
Okay, no Airbnbs in the French Quarter.
Except I think there's 2 blocks on Bourbon Street. That was the compromise position. Everyone's fine with that, is my understanding. But nowhere else.
Okay.
I totally am a full support of that. However, what's happened though is we've also had some unintended consequences in terms of other neighborhoods now. As soon as a property goes for sale, if it's close to the French Quarter, people are swooping in from out of town buying them.
Yeah.
And now there are corporations that do this. You realize
Wow,
that?
no.
That come in, and that's their business model. They like buy multiple houses and turn them into Airbnbs. So what we're seeing, like in Treme, on Ursulines,
so we're like
there's 2 blocks on Ursulines. I was walking it. Every single house is an Airbnb.
Jeez.
So when we talk
so there
about
is no
their culture,
neighborhood. There is no neighborhood.
and that cannot be allowed. Now, with what I'm saying, though, I want to be very clear. I don't have an issue with the folks that have your homestead exemption. They want to rent out a couple of rooms because you and I both know how expensive certain issues are to just live in this town. Right. Our taxes have gone up.
So if I have a double, I can, and my homestead is in that house.
Right.
I can Airbnb the other side of my double.
And I like that shared economy. It's good. You know, I've redone a couple houses in old Algiers, sold it to first-time home buyers and like public school teachers. They want to have a couple rooms coming in or a single mom.
Yeah.
And that's good revenues for people, and I think that's good. What I'm talking about is the commercialization of a residence.
Well, because I had like someone tell me that they had an Airbnb next to their house that this person, it was a double that they marketed, one side for bachelorette parties and one side for bachelor parties. So like I have to go to work in the morning, Bywater and the houses are this far away from each other, and when you've got a bachelor party and a bachelorette party and it's a shit show. Yeah, you're stepping over sashes and stuff in the morning, like it's insane, I mean, and that's not the French Quarter. This is Bywater,
right? But let's also remember French Quarter started off as a neighborhood.
The French Quarter is a neighborhood.
And I've always said the French Quarter. What happens in the French Quarter? It's like the canary in the coal mine. When these issues are like really magnified and you see the results, it can slowly filter out into Marigny, Bywater, and Treme.
Because does Marigny, Bywater, and Treme, do we develop hotels there? Because they got this new hotel going up.
This is what I think. When you have a whole house short-term rental, it's a commercial use for a residential house.
Yeah.
Follow the zoning.
There you go.
Right now, everyone's already done it. And maybe I'm looking at this too simplistically, and I'd love to open up this issue. I also don't think a one-size-fits-all for each neighborhood. I think the neighborhood should self-determine it.
Okay.
But the way I look at it is the neighborhoods have kind of determined where they want commercial.
Done.
Allow it there, done. And then if you look at the way bed and breakfasts are regulated, you can only have one bed and breakfast per facing block, according to our zoning law right now.
So just stick with that.
They did that on purpose to make sure that the residential life is maintained within neighborhoods.
Right.
So a lot of this was done, but the issues with these things is that technology is doing leaps and bounds, and believe it or not, government's a little slow in catching up with technology. Right. So we just have to kind of relook at it, revisit it.
So in a city where, and we're gonna, I guess we should touch on crime a little bit, but in a city where we're having trouble making sure like we're not mugged, how do we regulate this particular thing? What does the enforcement look like?
Well, right now there is already an enforcement piece happening at City Hall.
Okay.
When there's a registered system where you have to register if you're going to be an Airbnb, and then there's steps. Part of the issues I'm hearing rumblings about, like in the French Quarter, is a lot of the enforcement is having neighbors complain on neighbors. And I don't really think that's a good way of doing it. So I think we need to tweak it a little bit.
Tweak it a little bit on that. Yeah. Since the last time we talked, crime was like the end-all, be-all of this election. It was crime, 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 crime. Then there was the Landrew flood, which I've been calling the Landrew flood. But now it's all infrastructure. Infrastructure is the main new issue. Right. What's your I mean, you're sitting on the council, so you're going to be making decisions on this infrastructure.
Right. So regardless, it's public safety.
Yeah.
Crime and infrastructure, and in this city particularly, when we talk about the Landrew flood or however you want to look at it, that's still infrastructure.
Well, he's the president. I do that to make sure everyone knows that he is the president of the Sewage and Water Board. So
but let's also be clear that multiple levels broke down. So the city council has a committee called Public Works, which my opponent chairs, who has canceled many, many meetings and has not provided any oversight whatsoever. Right? So let's be very clear that we have leaders in office that
need to
drop the ball.
Yeah.
Yes, the
All over the
management.
place.
Yes, the management and Surgeon Water Board potentially lied. Okay, I mean let's be clear on that too.
Yeah.
That the information, you can only do so much with the information given you. But if you don't show up to work, then how are we going to get anything done? And then this is the same person who now wants to put council members back on Surgeon Water Board. Why? What is the core competency of a council member to all of a sudden say I should be on Surgeon Water Board?
Yeah.
No. Every good government group, civic group.
Well, I mean, on Sewage and Water Board, don't we need like engineers?
Yes, we need engineers, hydrologists. And look, if we want greater oversight than what we have, which I'm 100% in favor of, then make it a city department. Because the thing you have to ask your council member, the council member's two main roles is the budget, passing that budget, and also zoning land use issues.
Yeah.
With the budget, the best way for oversight in a department is through the budgetary process.
Okay.
If you make Sewage and Water Board part of a
The
department
budget,
underneath in the budget, everything is open. And not just that one time a year when you're slamming the budget, you can repeatedly
you
call.
can check it all the time.
So that's what we need to have.
I like
and
it.
then we also need to have technology. So for instance, when Isaac happened, when I was on the council, it was an electrical event, right? There was a power outage event.
Oh, yeah.
And it was huge. And we banged on Entergy so hard that they created an app. Now, if there's a power outage,
You can see it right on the phone.
You can see the estimate when it's going to be turned back on, and we also get notifications by text.
Yeah, it's great.
They did all of this.
That's great.
Wonderful. We should be demanding the same thing from Sewage and Water Board.
Yeah.
We should have a map of where the catch basins are, which shows which ones are going to be cleaned when. That's not hard. We should be able to have
That's brilliant.
where the pumps are, what power capacity they're operating at, when were the drainage canals in Algiers cleaned, when was it? This should all be open, transparent information.
Yeah,
We don't need quarterly report. We need this.
Yeah, no.
So I'm a big proponent of that as well.
Nice.
You like that?
Love it. I do like that.
Pretty
No, that's very simple. Okay. Thank you so much. How's your ginger latte?
Oh my God, this is really good.
We make it with real ginger. Yeah.
I
When
love
you
that.
Yeah, it's
Very tasty.
Yeah, we try.
I've never had one of these before.
We try to
Ginger latte.
try to play around with different stuff. Kristin, thank you so much for coming again on the show.
No, my pleasure.
And,
I really enjoy
to
it.
come and sit down with me, it's such a. I really feel like I'm involved in the process.
Good.
I really
And
appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure.
And you need to be involved in the process too. What's
yes,
the date?
October 14th.
October 14th. Get out.
And there's
and
no
vote.
runoff, so it's really important for everybody to go out and vote.
Yeah, get it. Thank you so much, Kristin. Appreciate it. Take care.